All right, Brent Porcio, topvelocity.net. Going to do a 2x biometric analysis. We're not working with front views. We're going to be breaking down Jake from when he attended camp, and he threw a pitch at 70 miles an hour to recently in the programs at 76, just to see what is improving and where he can keep improving. All right, so everything's going to be in inches. Speeds is inches per frame. Distance from origins coming from the back foot on the rubber. XY position. X is going to be the horizontal measurement, and Y will be the vertical measurement. So let's just follow the lower half. Both 18 frames of front foot strike. Frame 12 is typically where the leg drive begins. We'll take it to frame 12. As we can see in the most recent footage, the higher ball speed, he's 19 inches from the rubber on the right hip, and he's 16 in the lower velocity pitch. So, indication that he, in the same amount of time, is generating more momentum down the mound. As we can see here, he's 28 inches from the rubber to 34 on the hip, vertical measurement of the hip. And that shows us, too, that he's also lowering his center of gravity better. Okay, all things that will contribute to velocity going into front foot strike. We can see, too, at the same time, if the right wrist is 38 inches from the ground to 38 inches from the ground. So actually, they're the same height. Looks to be, his trunk is obviously more dipped back. So it looks to be, it's actually more abducted just because the trunk is dipped back, but similar positions from the ground. The only negative I'm seeing, which would have occurred here too, is the loss of torsion. The right knee is kind of collapsing inward. I like to see the right knee outside of the hip to toe. If I had a straight line between them, I'd like to see it in line or outside of that. That's in torsion. That means it's stable. It's going to be able to peak and continue to drive force through the hips into front foot strike. So we know, obviously, just taking Jake through an evaluation, we know he has hip internal rotation, external rotation, abduction, extension restrictions, which is preventing him from really holding that knee in torsion. So let's take him to front foot strike. This point here, we can see the right hip is 41 inches from the rubber to 34, so considerably farther down the mound too. Now we've generated the hips into front foot have moved farther down the mound. That doesn't mean the stride length is farther, that just means the hips are through more, so we have more rotation in the hips. If we go to the left toe, that'll give us a stride length 66 inches to 57 or 64, so only a 2-inch difference in the stride length, but more hip rotation at front foot strike, which is good. Problem is, it looks to be that there's also more shoulder rotation. So we're not really gaining hip to shoulder separation, but we are gaining momentum down the mound, more earlier hip rotation, or more hip rotation in front foot strike. The reason we don't look to be as closed off is because we can see, the left elbow is a little bit closer to the rubber at 50 inches to 47. Well, actually, no. Well, we're not. We need to base it to body parts. So let's see. If we did the left elbow to left shoulder, 42 to 57, so that's 5 inches. And over here, it's 47 to 50, so that's 3 inches. So you can see the elbow's more pulled in, just an indication of shoulder rotation at this point. If we looked at, let's see, let's go left hip, 44 to right elbow, 44 to 22, so that's 22 inches. And we'll go left hip, 41 to right elbow, 18. So that's 23 inches. So yes, another indication there is more shoulder rotation. So that's the issue here. And that typically happens. We start to pick up momentum down the mound. We get more hip rotation into front foot strike. We increase stride length. and then the shoulders just open earlier. So if we go back to see if there was any early arm cocking, you can see he's fully cocked at 17. We can see here at the lower velocity pitch, he's, at 17, he's not as fully cocked. So it could be moving faster, you cock the arm faster, which is typically the whole thing what's going on too at the same time. So it is earlier arm cocking, but what it is faster momentum, faster everything, and that's what we don't want. That's the challenge here. The challenge is to pick up the momentums, pick up the speeds and the distances down the mound, but delay the trunk as those pick up. That would be the ultimate goal, and that's really the bread and butter of this approach. So at this point, let's watch the trunk. So if we watch the chin is at 43 here to 40 here. But if we watch the chin go to pitch release from front foot, or just after pitch release, 43 to 59, so that's 16 inches. Here it's 40 to after pitch release, so that's 16 inches. So trunk carried the same distances, but looks like we might have got a better trunk tilt, forward trunk tilt angle. So we can go from the ground to the hip to the chin. We get 47 degrees. To 57 degrees. So even though it covered the same distances, it went into more of a linear position. That more than likely is related to, if we go back to front foot strike, if we look at the chin position to say the left hip position, so it's 1 inch behind the left hip. If we go back here, we look at the chin to the left hip, it's 1 inch behind it, okay, as well there. Well, then it wouldn't be related to that. It's probably just going to be related to the angle of the front leg. This is where we were playing geometry here. So if we look at the angle of the front leg force vector, and we need the other angle, let's see. Getting 83. Look at it here. Getting 84, 85. So 2 degree more vertical here at front foot. Or actually, I was supposed to look at that at pitch release. Sorry about that. And I did it wrong again. Okay, they're the same. So what's creating more of the forward trunk tilt? Lower center of gravity, maybe. Let's look at the left hip, 27 inches from the ground to 33. So that's what it is. So it wasn't the force vector angle. It's obviously the upper thigh, which can be the hip abduction angle. So if we look at the left hip, it's 27 inches from the ground to 33. So it's 6 inches lower. The hip is 6 inches lower. So that means when the trunk goes forward, it should be in a more linear position because that hip is lower to the ground. Like I said, we're just playing geometry here. So, but the point is high velocity pitchers have more forward trunk tilts during maximum external rotation, specifically during this position here, which typically lead to more torques, loads in the arm. So if we look at this position and we look at the chin here, 54 to 49, so you can see the chin is 5 inches ahead when we know the stride length was only 2 inches more. So the lower center of gravity is promoting more, with the hips, is promoting more forward trunk tilts, which is ideal for really loading the arm, because the more forward the trunk is from the hip, the more externalization, or the more range of motion we can put in the arm before pitch release. More range of motion typically gives us more time to generate forces. Okay, so we see trunk angles, maybe not, the distance is not improving, but because of lower center of gravity, we more forward trunk tilts to go with it. So if we watch the front knee, pretty much in this view, the last thing that really gives us a good idea of improvements, we watch it front foot strike, 58 inches from the rubber, and as we go through pitch release, next frame it holds, and then it goes back 2 inches, and then stays there. We look here in the lower velocity pitch, front foot strike 55, next frame it drifts an inch, then comes back, then holds. And that's after pitch release. So better use of the front leg and stabilization and some extension. So if you look at the recap, just in a 6 mile an hour increase, we saw more momentum down the mound, a lower center of gravity. But the negative was we didn't get as much hip to shoulder separation out of it. If we did, that would have thrown even harder. Then we saw a lower center of gravity promoting more forward trunk tilts during specifically maximum external rotation, and a more stabilized and extended front leg to support that as well. So just in these side views, some really key things to what's driving the ball speed that Jay can continue to improve on. Continue to improve on momentum, peaking those forces late. More torsion in the leg is going to support that. And then trying to really get better at more hip to shoulder separation, delaying the trunk a little bit more, delaying the arm cocking a little more. And then really trying to continue to get the good forward trunk tilts and more front leg extension, and that just continues to add more ball speed to the ball.